WuWa 3.1's banners are looking stacked, and it can be hard to decide who to spend your precious Astrites on. That's what I'm here to help you with today. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. We're gonna start things off with Aemeath, because Kuro Games has officially revealed the details of her kit today, so now we know some more specifics in regards to what she is going to do. She is going to have two modes, her Toon Break related mode, and her Fusion Burst related mode. Now, I'm gonna say now that her Fusion Burst related mode is very likely not going to be relevant upon her release, because we do not have a Fusion Burst applicant, and no, Chisa alone is very likely to not be enough to make it good. However, the 3.0 units, Linny and Mornier, are eating very well here, because they are highly likely to end up being Aemeath's best in slot teammates, considering that she does deal liberation damage primarily now. We now know this because of Kuro's official reveal of Aemeath's kit. And one of the things that Linny's outro skill provides is liberation damage bonus to the next incoming resonator. So I think it is pretty clear that she is going to be best in slot for Aemeath, and the Toon Break core is finally going to be receiving its first fully fledged Toon Break centric DPS. And you can only imagine how strong that is going to be. The Toon Break core is a really broken core at the minute that can slot into any non-negative status team in the game at the minute. It is amazing. Now imagine a main push character like Aemeath featuring plenty of Toon Break centric qualities in her kit, taking advantage of those two units. Yeah, this is going to be a strong DPS. And another thing that I should mention is that because she's a sword user, it's highly likely that you're going to be able to use Emerald of Genesis, simply because it's a very good sword, and most sword DPS users are able to utilize it quite nicely, thus meaning that I do not think Signature Weapon is going to be a requirement on her, but we still have to wait for more information, and wait for Kuro Games to officially release what that Signature Weapon does. But considering EOG's track record, we should be fine here. And another thing that I should mention is that she has decent variety when it comes to teammates, because I do not think you're going to need both Linny and Mornier in order to get your Aemeath to perform. Even just having one of them is going to be nice, and you can put in substitutes for the slot that you're missing. Linny Shorekeeper and Lupa Mornier is likely still going to be a very strong team for Aemeath, and that's another thing. Because of the Septimontian Gladiator, you're going to be able to form plenty of other teams of her. If you have pulled for even one of the many other fusion characters that we have in the game at the minute, you're going to be able to form a competent Aemeath team. If you have literally none of them, then Mortefe Lupa is going to be just fine. You have Mornier, Lupa Mornier. Brant Wuthering Waves Lupa, Changli Lupa, you get the point. You're obviously not going to be putting Encore and Galbrena in there, but all of the viable second slot teammates, they are going to be able to fit into her teams very nicely, because Lupa is just that strong. And Lupa can also be a second slot herself if you're running Mornier in the third slot. So all around, Aemeath being a fusion character is honestly very much in her favor when it comes to team options. But I should mention that there isn't really any 4-star character that's likely to be good with this kit, because the most free-to-play friendly unit that I can think of here would be Jian Xin, and her rotation is painfully slow at S0. So you do ideally want at least one 5-star teammate on her team, and if you can manage that, then you're good as gold. All around, I'm expecting this to be a very highly influential character in the meta, and if you have at least one of her 5-star teammates, I believe she is going to absolutely dominate. A very safe pull all around. Easily S+ tier when it comes to the value rankings for this patch. A very, very powerful pull. Just make sure that you have at least one viable teammate for her. Lupa is going to be rerunning alongside her, so there is that. And moving on to Lupa, actually, this character is one that I consider to be insanely underrated, because she is so dominant in the fusion niche that if you don't have her, you are basically locked out of that entire attribute. Unless you have a double Toon Break core and you intend to pull for Aemeath, in which case, yes, you will have a fusion DPS then, you generally just don't play fusion if you don't have Lupa. There is also Galbrena with Cho Yuen, and Galbrena is also capable of using the double Toon Break core. So okay, from a technical standpoint, you don't need Lupa in order to play fusion, you have other options, but even so, it cannot be denied the amount of versatility and flexibility this character offers when it comes to the niche. Yes, she is very much tailored towards this specific attribute, and you basically do not use this character if you do not intend to interact with the fusion attribute. But because Kuro Games constantly releases new strong fusion units and they're rerunning her alongside Aemeath, she is really strong, and she continuously gets new partners to work with. She is at her best, and she thrives when there are plenty of fusions on your account. And because there are so many in the game at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if you've been playing for a while if you had at least one. Now, okay, there is a chance that you might not have one, but if you're a very new player and you're unable to get the 3.0 characters, Lupa into Aemeath is going to be a very safe investment for you. So all around, this character's buffs are absolutely insane. She's not particularly sig-reliant either, because she can use the standard Broadblade pretty effectively, though I will say Wildfire Mark is a very good Broadblade, so consider that. And if you weren't able to get a hold of Eleni or Mornier, then this character is going to be your saving grace when it comes to building Aemeath teams. This unit is so good at the minute, and I cannot recommend her enough. I will say her biggest flaw is that if you don't play Fusion, then you have no use for this character. She is only usable if you play Fusion. Though I should mention that if you have an Encore and you just generally want Lupa, then Lupa's going to be an excellent pull for her. All around, she's going into S tier for the value rankings of this patch. She is indeed a niche unit, but she is just really strong right now because said niche is absolutely thriving at the moment, and we're about to get a really big release for it. Then we downgrade to a character that is much less meta, Chisa. She's a popular character, but she is not a strong character. Listen, this unit is just not worth the cost. You can get her, and she is going to be best in slot for the Cardathea team if you have her signature weapon, and only if you have her signature weapon, but all around, she's just not really worth it. I'm going to be clear and say, I do not think Aemeath is going to save her. At first, I didn't even think that Aemeath was going to be negative status, but okay, she is awesome. Chisa's not going to be the character that makes it good. I honestly expect it to be kind of useless upon release. Toon Break is the main mechanic that Aemeath is likely going to be benefiting from because we just do not have a Fusion Burst second slot teammate. No matter what, you generally cannot separate a negative status DPS from their second slot teammate. Cardathea can work without Shakona, but only if you have Chisa, and even then it's not that good. Chisa is a character that simply cannot justify the amount of pulls required to get her hitting the ground running. Yes, she has some nice personal damage, yes, she is pretty universal across all negative status teams, but until Aemeath's negative status team is actually completed, I cannot see Chisa being a useful character. If you really, really like her and you just want to use her, go for it. But she's literally a downgrade to Spectral Rover in Zani teams, because Zani does not apply her own negative status, so she can't even benefit from Chisa's signature weapon. And that's another thing. You don't have Chisa's signature weapon, then this character loses a really large chunk of her value. She is a popular character, and I know that a lot of Chisa fans are not going to be happy hearing this, but unfortunately she's just not good right now. I do think she will eventually have something to her name. Okay, she is already a slight upgrade in Cardathea teams with her signature. Great! And Aemeath does seem to have negative status potential. Great! So if you like Chisa and you want to get her in preparation for the future, okay, fine, though do know that you don't really have to do that right now because they're likely just going to rerun Chisa again whenever we do get a Fusion Burst second slot teammate, but I don't think that Chisa is really going to shine until we get a Fusion Burst character to support Aemeath. I just don't think Chisa's going to be all that for now. She is one of the lowest pull value 5 stars in the game at the minute. Honestly, at this point, most of her sauce just lies in being a good double pawn matrix choice, because she frees up some of your more universal third slot teammates, and even then she only has 1 charge, unlike the universal characters that have 2, and you only need about 4 to 5 teams to get all of the rewards from that game mode. So if you care about maxing out your score, then okay, she is useful there, but otherwise, she is just such a niche pickup. I genuinely cannot recommend her in her current state. This is just not a good character, man, I'm sorry. Then we move on to Luuk. Now, unfortunately, we still have to wait for Kuro Games to officially confirm quite a few things regarding this guy, but we can at least be assured that he is going to be a spectral character, and he seems to be a pretty interesting one. We do have some standard gauntlets in-game that provide basic attack percent, and we do have a spectral set in-game that also provides basic percent, so I am going to make the guess that Luuk will be able to use Sanhua, which is going to make him more budget-friendly than Aemeath, for instance. And it also means that if he does end up being a basic attack user, we already know that he uses gauntlets, then he'll be pretty free-to-play friendly because he's also going to be able to use said standard gauntlets. So all around, he seems like a pretty nice budget-friendly choice. He seems like he's going to be a really good pickup for anybody that's just starting out the game. And all around, while I don't expect him to be as much of a behemoth as Aemeath, simply because that character is definitely Kuro's golden child at the minute when it comes to marketing, I do still think that he is going to be a very formidable pickup, and if you're searching for a good DPS, then he is going to be a good choice. Also, he just happens to be one of my favorite Lahai Roy characters, so I myself am very, very excited for him. And all around, I think a large part of his value is going to lie in the fact that he is going to likely be pretty budget friendly if he does end up being a basic attack user. Though I don't want to push liberation percent off of the table, considering that Linny does provide liberation percent on outro, though I am not sure about that, because she is going to be Aemeath's best in slot most likely, considering Kuro Games officially revealed parts of her kit today. That does seem to imply that she uses liberation damage bonus a good amount. We're also yet to see whether Luuk actually cares that much about toon mechanics. We'll have to wait and see in that regard, but I do think that he is at the very least going to be a pretty nice budget-friendly pick. I'm gonna put him into S tier for the value rankings of this patch. Then we move on to Galbrena. The thing is, she's competing with Aemeath for being a fusion DPS, and while Galbrena can also use Lupa and such, she is a very good character, but ultimately Aemeath is right there. I think if what you're looking for is a good fusion DPS, just go for Aemeath instead. Now, I will say that if you have a Choyuwen, for instance, and you've really built your account towards Galbrena, then yes, she is still going to be a very good pickup, and she's still a very strong TOA DPS, so I wouldn't worry about her strength. She is highly competent. You generally don't want to use her in Whimpering Wastes. She is very much more of a boss killer, and in that role, she very much succeeds. And she's also able to use Static Mist quite nicely, which makes her a pretty free-to-play friendly DPS, all things considered. Not to mention that she's also able to use more Mortefi Shorekeeper, and it's not even too bad. So at least she has an actual good 4-star teammate. So all around, she is a good character, but the main point that I want to put across here is that you have a better fusion DPS at your disposal that is going to be releasing in the first half. Now, if you simply have a preference for Galbrena, which makes sense because her aesthetic is very different from Aemeath's, then yes, she is still a very strong and good DPS. She also didn't release too long ago, so all things considered, she is still a very highly performing unit. But ultimately, I would suggest Aemeath instead if you have at least one of her viable 5-star teammates. Otherwise, Galbrena is still an excellent choice, and she can ultimately use different teammates to Aemeath if you ideally just want to use them both on the same account, though I will say that having 2 DPSs of the same attribute on one account isn't exactly ideal, because then if we ever get Fusion Counter in TOA, or just Fusion Counter in general, you're going to be a little screwed. But of course, I should mention there is Double Palm Matrix, which does ultimately justify pulling more characters if you simply want to max out your score there, so there is that as well, and considering that she can use different teammates to Aemeath, that is a nice benefit. So all things considered, a great DPS, just not one that is necessarily going to be on Aemeath's level, I believe. While she's going into A tier for the value rankings of this patch, let me make it very clear that I usually do these rankings in relation to the other characters that are currently on banners this patch, so she is an excellent unit, and she's mostly A tier compared to behemoths such as Lupa, Aemeath, and also I do believe that Luuk is likely to be quite good. So she is an excellent unit, she just has tough competition this time around. All around, I don't really think you can go wrong here. I'd say Chisa is the only bad pull that you can make here. I know that's going to sound a bit awkward because, you know, everyone likes different characters. It doesn't really feel good knowing that one of your favorites is not that good. But if you really like Chisa, I'll say this. Hang on a little bit longer. I do think there is a light at the end of a tunnel here, but I wouldn't say that this is suddenly Chisa's time having come yet. Now, I will say that if you choose to pick up Chisa now, that's not necessarily a bad choice because at least you'll have her for the future, but you could also just wait it out until she gets her next rerun and wait until the character actually acquires some genuine substantial value. But as for every other character this patch, there is some value there, and you can pretty much benefit from every unit this patch. Hopefully this video was able to tell you who'd get you the most bang for your Astrites in version 3.1. This has been Juice, signing out, and my answer is Luuk, because I cannot wait for that guy, though I will be trying to pull for Aemeath as well.